Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 122. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the talented creative team of I Am the First, issue 1 of a gay superhero origin story. We're happy to welcome Jeremy Flagg and Amanda Kahl.
Hello.
How's it going?
Hello.
All right. So welcome,
So far,
Jeremy,
so
for the good. Jeremy, yeah, welcome for the first time. Amanda, welcome for the third time. So
Third time.
Yep, congratulations. You made it to the status of friend of the show. So
yes.
yes.
This is what I've been aiming for.
Got to make sure you add that to your, add that to all of your promotional materials. I'll give you a PNG file for that.
Perfect.
And so congratulations, folks. Look, you've already hit you've already reached your goal. Your goal was to get 3,000, and you're already knocking at 4,000 already with 75 backers.
Ah!
Yeah, we weren't prepared for that.
No. We were like, oh, I hope that we managed to make $3,000 in a month, and then we got it like almost immediately, and now we're just kind of terrified.
Like, we had already planned out, like, okay, so our second week of advertising will be this, and the third week we'll do this, and 24 hours later we're like, well, crap, now what?
And so we can jump in and talk about this Kickstarter. But at first, I'm really curious how you two actually first met and got to know each other and decided to work on a project. So, Jeremy, do you want to go ahead and grab it and tell me, you as the writer of this, how did you?
Okay, Amanda, you ready for the story again?
I'm ready. Okay. I'm always ready for this story.
So many years ago, I was a senior in high school, and I was taking a creative writing class with a bunch of the other seniors, and it was kind of our blow-off class for the year. And so it was first thing in the morning, and a little while into the class, we've been writing and doing what seniors do, basically try to be all provocateur with our writing. And in strolls this 7th grader. This little itty bitty 7th grader. And it's kind of are you lost? No. Amanda had moved to delightful Milo, Maine. Medford? LaGrange?
LaGrange, yeah. I lived, but our school was in Milo, but yeah.
And because they had no idea where to put a student who took normal classes at normal people levels, they shoved her into a senior level creative writing class.
Yeah, my 7th grade English teacher was like, I don't have anything for you to do, so I'm gonna go put you in the high school creative writing class.
And so, which was fine, because we were like the degenerates of the school. Like, we were like the outcasts, but our school was so small, like there was no such thing as really outcast, because it would have been like one person. So we were like, okay, let's bring her in, let's do this. And the only thing I can remember is Amanda being put into my group during a journal read where it is a mutual friend of ours, Josh Decker, who we really need to start sending him these links because he gets brought up all the time.
We keep talking about him.
And Josh Decker had recently come out, publicly come out of the closet. I don't know, one of those things. And so basically all of his... It was
public in creative writing class at the very least. Yeah, we all knew.
We all knew. He was basically writing gay smut. And so he just kind of leans over and goes, I can't read this. And we were kind of like, well, you kind of have to, because that's kind of what the project is. And so he's sitting there with his little journal, and he's just reading along, and it gets to the point where you're like, I know where this is going. And he just kind of looks up at Amanda, and he's like, no. You're like,
Mutter, mutter, mutter.
what was that? And he's like, I can't say it. And so that was my introduction to Amanda, was
Yeah, making
that-
all of the seniors in high school feel awkward because this 13-year-old has shown up in their midst, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh no, maybe we
We
should
had to-
behave."
we had to tame all our gay smut, and there was a lot of it in that class.
There was. That's true.
And then, of course, I graduated and completely forgot everything about Milo. And I eventually wound up going to grad school in Savannah. And out of the blue, this random person sends me a friend request. And our friend Josh, who pops up into the picture yet again, is living in Savannah at the time. And I was like, who is this? And he's like, remember that girl from the class? And I was like, oh my God, it's her. And so I had to go down to Savannah for my thesis. And of course, Josh wasn't there at the time. And I was like, well, let's have a Milo reunion and I'll go hang out with Amanda. And so this 13-year-old girl in sweltering heat is now a 20-something-year-old, strolls in her like crisp leather jacket. Basically,
it wasn't that hot.
It was so hot. I'm from Maine. Everything's hot. And she like basically like sits down at the table, like kicks her legs up on it, like orders a beer, slams it. Like, I mean, she basically did
Jeremy
everything.
Might be exaggerating slightly.
Not even a little. She like flashed some a gun in the holster.
Now,
like,
oh my goodness. Now we're completely making stuff up.
But yeah, it was just kind of funny because that 13-year-old, apparently she aged as well. And ever since then, our lives have just been weirdly connected. And so eventually she got me working at comic conventions selling books. And, you know, that's where like we were always around each other talking stuff.
I sucked him into the artist alley life.
Oh my God. Why did you do that? was that revenge for gay smut? Like,
maybe.
That's a good one. Dish served cold. And at one of those things, I just clearly remember her saying, this dude keeps asking me about, he always says like he has an idea for a comic book. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I remember her saying that at the first Bangor Toy Comic Con. Mm-hmm. And like a couple years later, I just kind of looked at her and I was like, hey, I have an idea for a comic.
Because this is a thing for like every comic artist who ever shows at a convention, you always have random people walk up to you and be like, oh, so I have this great idea for a comic. It's like, cool. So don't we all? Like, please move along.
And yeah, and eventually I pitched her the idea and she just kind of nodded her head and was like, no. And then made me keep pitching her ideas until she was like, that one. Okay. You're supposed to be kind of nice, but
I'm very serious about comics. So, well, what was funny is that this was actually a story that originally you were just like telling me about as like a YA novel that you wanted to work on. And you told me the story, but when he was just like explaining it to me, because we were just kind of like having one of these sessions where like, oh yeah, I'm working on this and I'm working on that. And we're just kind of like throwing ideas back and forth and catching each other up on what we're working on. And he mentioned this story. And as soon as he started describing it to me, I could see it. Like I had a clear mental picture of what this story was and how it should look. And even though he intended it as a novel, and then later he was telling me about like, oh yeah, well, there's this idea too that I thought about for maybe we could do a, comic series together like this. And I was like, yeah, that idea is all right, but I like your YA novel a lot better for a comic.
And yeah, and then she put me through comic book boot camp. Because apparently just having an idea is not enough.
It's not a comic. There's a significant gap between an idea and an actual comic.
And yeah, it was funny because I was telling you the other day I was in a room with a bunch of Image comic artists, and they were like, I was explaining this same story, and they're like, yep. we have all dealt with that. And I was like, well, glad to know I'm just one of the masses that sounds like a dork coming up with this stuff. But yeah, and that's kind of how the idea kind of found its footing at this point. And the sad part is the original concept for it. So the series is called I Am the First, and I got the idea because I thought it would make for a really cool book title.
Just went from there.
And then I was like, oh, what are you the first of? So yeah, it really just started with a title and then got built out from there. I can't even tell you where some of the inspiration came from. It was kind of one of those wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I think this will work. I'll write it down and deal with it later.
So talk to us a bit about the concept of I Am the First.
So at some point I had heard an interview that talked about how superheroes all are superheroes because of the trauma they endured. And they were trying to prove that this wasn't accurate. And if you go look through anything, like the Flash's mom died, Superman's planet blew up, Batman's parents, like the X-Men, everyone hates them. Like it's over and over that there is a moment.
Something horrible happens to them, and that's part of their hero's journey to become the superheroes that they are.
And they can either go left and become a villain or endure and become a hero. And so that when I heard that, I thought, oh, I guess I had never really thought about it. And so in this sense, they're talking like the psychological whatever. Well, we kind of turned that a little on its head. And in our book, actual trauma creates heroes, or gives people powers. And so everyone who has a power gets it through some extreme trauma. And it's not like all doom and gloom type stuff, but you know, death is kind of a big deal. It's kind of traumatic. And ta-da, somehow you got powers out of it. And we don't really go into it because it wasn't important, but that kind of started the basis for how our universe works. Which for our main character is really important because the opening page for him is him rebounding from a traumatic event. And that's what starts his journey. So yeah, that's kind of where things kicked off for us, was this bigger concept. And then we kind of filled it out because we just started asking questions, and it's been great working with Amanda because we grew up in a very special place.
Yeah, special is the word.
There are things that happen where we grew up that no one else in America would understand.
No one else in like on like planet Earth, maybe.
Like the one I always tell everyone is, so we did you have Mr. Oakes for health?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Oakes was still around. Mr. Oakes was still around long after I graduated. He didn't retire until rather recently.
So Mr. Oakes went to school with my grandmother, taught my parents, taught me, and taught pretty much the generation after me as well. Mm-hmm. And in our health class, the opening thing was, if I remember correctly, was like alcohol, drug awareness stuff.
Right.
And then like
so
hygiene.
There were four units in our health class. So one of them was substance abuse. Like that was one unit. One unit was first aid.
Oh, yes.
One unit was sex ed. the most comprehensive sex ed I've ever heard of, by the way. Like,
Yep.
most people that I've ever talked to did not learn a fraction of what we did in high school. And the last one was hunter safety.
So
by the end of this
basically-
year,
basically by the end of your freshman year, you know how to handle a rifle. Like, and people are like, wait, you got a hunting license?
we got our hunting license and also learned how to do CPR and also learned about every possible form of protection in sex that you could possibly think of.
Yeah, by the same person who went to school with my grandmother and
also don't do drugs.
Yeah, which unfortunately with our school it was all too late. But
yeah, well, yeah, there's that too. But
so like when we were talking about this, one of the things that we really were adamant about is we wanted the book to take place in rural Maine, and we made it a nondescript area. It's Millinocket, but
right, yeah, we made up a town name for it so that it's not named after a real town, and it's got a Maine sounding town name, but it's not. It is inspired heavily by places like Millinocket and like the town where we grew up, Milo, and just basically all of the little like dead and dying small towns that used to be big towns that are all over this area of Maine.
And that's kind of a big thing. Like we where we grew up, 30 years prior to us, they were like booming, and like they had seen their heyday, and when we came around they were dying. And so we wanted the book to take place in a setting like that because there's a lot of resentment from the people there, and it was a way that we could work that into the characters. And so we really made an effort to make this an everybody story. But if you're from Maine, or if you're from any small rural town, you're gonna nod your head and be like, yep, that's exactly what this place is like.
Right. Yeah.
And so how much of this, so as you mentioned, Jeremy, is like when Amanda kind of said, hey, you need to go through the comic book boot camp in that sense. Explain, so if we have the authors who's thinking, hey, I've always kind of wanted to write a comic book. I know some people who can draw pictures, and people think it's just so easy to draw pictures, or people think it's so easy to write, where it takes a lot of skill to do both. So what would be what did you see that was different between your long form work and what was to writing a comic book script?
Do you remember reading comics like X-Men #1, like the 1969 X-Men, where Jean Grey is like, I'm going to use my telekinesis, the ability to move things with my mind?
Yes.
Did you really just explain out what telekinesis is in the same panel in which you are moving something with your mind? How redundant can you be? And that was something, I mean, I grew up on comics. I am an X-Men wiki waiting to happen. But at the same time, like, Amanda came in and was like, dude, you're being redundant. Like, some of the stuff, like,
you don't need to
some
do
of
all
what
this.
some of it, that is what artists is there for, to make these visuals happen. You don't need to. And I was definitely heavy-handed on it, and thankfully Amanda was like, yep, his first time doing this, we're just gonna let him roll with it. But like I wrote it in script format because in my head that makes more sense, like I can digest that. Right. And so I wrote it like, because I did plays growing up, and so I wrote it like stage directions, and some of it might have been helpful, some of it you can tell like she was like, no, I'm gonna go do my own thing, thank you very much. But it helped me visualize, because she can read a script, and like the other day we needed a page count. She was like, I'm just going to read the script. Yep, this is going to be 20 pages. Yep, this is going to be 22 pages. I wrote out that first script, and in my head, I wrote like a 90-page comic book, and she's like, yeah, this is like 24 pages, you're fine.
It's fine.
And
yeah, well, and part of the thing too is that, like, because we talked about formatting, and I showed Jeremy examples of like what official comic book scripts look like, and I was like, don't do this. Like, don't do this, because if you've never written a comic book before, then it doesn't make sense for you to try to tell me how to break down the panels, because you don't have that experience. Like, you trying to tell me what to fit in a panel, these panels are going to be nonsense, because that's not your experience. Like, that's not what you have the background in. Just tell me what happens and who says what, and I will figure out how that makes sense to convey visually. Which I know obviously a lot of writers are not going to be willing to relinquish that level of control, and will be like, oh, no way. But Jeremy trusted me, which was good.
I would even take it another step and say, if a writer is not willing to relinquish that control, don't do a comic. Because you're a writer, not an artist. It would be like me I'm an artiste. I went to school for art. I know obscene amount of visual art stuff. But let me tell you how to make your music, because I'm an artist, and of course I know how to do this.
No. What are you doing?
No. So, and that was the thing that all the image artists were saying was, let us do what we do well. Our job is to visualize what you are putting down. And Amanda did a really good job. Like, she sent me all the thumbnails. And there was one or two scenes.
There were a couple of pages where we kind of realized that stuff was just not working as written, and we revised together, basically. Like, we were troubleshooting and coming up with like, okay, this isn't doing what we need it to, or what he envisioned it to do, like what Jeremy had envisioned when he wrote it. So we'll revise it and figure that out at the thumbnail stage. So I made sure to make like extra large thumbnails that were much neater and more legible than the ones I normally do for myself, so that he could actually read them.
And even then, the visuals that she did, she was following my script. So her visual, like, I could see where she was going with it, but I had kind of painted her into a corner that she couldn't get out with on those panels. And so, like, that's where it stopped being me. And I mean, I have a background in visual art, so I can talk artist, but even then, like, and I think I've been fairly good about this, I think, like, you do you. just if you have a question, let me know. Otherwise, I'm out of that conversation. And then I think the only page that I specifically asked to rehash was the last page of the first issue.
Yeah.
Because for the whole first issue, like, it was building, and then there was a moment in my head, and it wasn't, again, not her. I just did not put out that in a way that made sense. So that's where, like, it was definitely a learning experience for me. And even after the first one, the rest of them just happened quickly. So that part was really good. But yeah, I got schooled, because who knew, like, all the plot that you write into a novel, you don't get 400 pages to express yourself. Like, there is a very finite number of pages. So
let me ask you then, Jeremy, did you feel as though you like writing comic strip? Or are you gonna see, or a part of you saying, okay, once this project's over, I got to go back to writing long form because it's way easier for me?
Well, so we've already had a conversation about the sequel. Because I can't. There's not even a plot. There's a title, because that's how this works. It's such a good
Jeremy's
title.
whole MO. I've got a great title. Okay, well, what's the story? I'll get there.
We'll get to it. I think there's like a granddaughter in a deathbed. Like, I don't really know, but
Oh, okay.
it's
What?
perfect.
Oh, okay.
But if you're gonna have a book called I Am the First, you have to have your sequel called I Am the Last. So
well, then if you call it I Am the Second, then you can be able to set up a lot more series in place. See?
And then it turns into like a skit, though. Like, wait, who's on second?
that means we would have to do more in the middle.
All right.
We'll see. We'll see if we survive
let us
this
just
experience.
survive this book first.
So let me ask you then, Amanda. It's like you've worked on different projects before. What were the what are some of the things working with Jeremy that you're able to you've learned about yourself or learned professionally that you're going to try to implement in future projects with other creatives?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, part of the thing is it's been so easy working with Jeremy, and in that, like, we speak a lot of the same language and have a lot of the same experience. So that's been like incredibly easy as far as just being on the same page about stuff. I will say that I've gotten, like, because it's just the two of us, and comics is my thing and not Jeremy's thing, I've had to take more of a leadership role on this project than I normally would when I'm being contracted to work for somebody. And I think that's probably been really good for me, because a lot of times, especially as like an artist, where you're like, somebody please just pay me to draw, and then you don't like you like don't want to complain, and you don't want to point out that things aren't going to work, and you just like do what people tell you, and you're like, okay. And it's like, I feel like this project has given me a lot more confidence, where it's like, no, I do know what I'm talking about sometimes. And I'm gonna say that.
And it has been really great, because like I've published 20 something books at this point, and like I understand publishing. Like I got this pretty well in the bag. None of it really translates to comics. So it's simple as, how big is a comic book? I don't have to deal with that stuff. And
Right.
Well, what if we do the hardback? It doesn't Amanda's basically just the wealth of knowledge, and she's probably Googling it for all I know.
I mean, some stuff. I don't remember the exact dimensions of a comic book off the top of my head, because an American Standard comic book is a really goofy size. So I have to Google it every time, because it's a number that doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. Like, who does that?
I don't know. I'm sure there's some like arcane reason as to why it's that size. I don't know what it is.
And so let me ask you, because you two knew each other, are you running this as kind of like a partnership, or is this a business with a contract where you both signed, or how did this work?
We so should have done that.
That would be smart, right? Right? No, so right now we're just kind of running it as like a loose partnership. We also didn't get super involved in that, partially because we weren't sure if it was gonna like get off the ground. And our agreement was basically like, if this Kickstarter flops, we both just walk away and move on with our lives and maybe revisit this someday. But it's such an intensive, like such a labor intensive project, especially on my end, that it was like, we're if this isn't doing anything, we can't pour all this energy into it. So now that it's like, oh, the Kickstarter's succeeding, okay, maybe now we should bring paperwork into this, just for the sake of keeping everybody safe and square.
Well, and some of it is, I don't think so. Technically, this is my intellectual property as far as the origin story goes, and I do think some authors would run into that saying, well, I came up with the idea, I deserve all of this. It took me 4 days to write all 5 issues for the first script, edit them, get them read by someone, and then make all my changes. 4 days. And Amanda, how long have you been working on it?
A lot more than 4 days.
Yeah.
like a lot more.
And I think that that's the thing that a lot of authors wouldn't understand is, like, I never walked into this thinking that this was going to be a 50-50 deal. I'm not egotistical, being like, well, I came up with the idea. I came up with the origin of the idea, and it's already morphed, and Amanda has put in her experience to it. So it's not, the ownership would be super fuzzy. So if we go to court,
Right.
this is going to be so messy.
It's gonna be a mess.
Yeah,
I'm gonna ruin your life, Jeremy.
Okay.
No, and I mean primarily like when you're working with people that you trust, contracts aren't really about the two of you getting into a dispute. Contracts are more about like what happens if one of us gets hit by a bus. Like
Right.
I live in Murder House.
Jeremy lives in Murder House. So the strange lady may pop up out of the basement and end him at any point. Well, then what do I do? That's really what the contract is for.
Then Amanda's going to have to color her own flats.
No, I don't want to do my own flats. No. Don't make me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you brought that because Jeremy, the suit of armor moved a little bit. I don't know if there was somebody in it or something.
No, Gerald. No.
Do you let's jump in it and talk about these the Kickstarter, and also, Jeremy, this is your first Kickstarter, right?
So I did a Kickstarter a few years ago for an anthology for a bunch of New England authors, and all we wanted to do for that one was cover our costs. So this is just a minimum number. We hit it. We're done. Like, let's not promote it. I don't want to promote it anymore because the fulfillment of a Kickstarter can be super overwhelming, and I was handling all of it. So this is my first like kind of solo project where it's ours and not like all these other people involved.
Yeah, I've been on a lot of like teams and a lot of projects where it was funded through Kickstarter, like lots of game design projects especially. I have been funded through Kickstarter, and I've been part of the team that was working on the project, but I haven't like had my hands in the guts of a Kickstarter project like this one before. And I'm like, oh, this is what it looks like back here. Okay.
And when you're setting up a Kickstarter, like you get enamored by that final number so ours originally was set for $3,000. Well, $3,000 is not really $3,000. And so we had to have like, basically you're having production meeting for the final product that you've barely started working on. And you're doing things like, how much is the hard copy going to weigh?
Right.
Right. How much is the hard copy going to weigh? How much is it going to cost to ship? Like, what if we make this? What if we print this many units? What if we print this many units? Like,
how many copies can fit in a box if we have to order them so we can get, like, you're looking at some super weird stuff that you don't think about ahead of time. But I learned my lesson on my last Kickstarter. If you don't do it then, at the end of it, you're going to be like, well, I'll just put this all on my credit card.
Yeah. Well, and that was part of the thing too, of like the thing we're running into right now is that what my experience with in game design Kickstarters especially is that most Kickstarters bury themselves when it comes to stretch goals of like, we funded, yay, now we have to provide the thing that we said we were going to provide. Oh, well, now it's like, and it's not actually like required to have stretch goals. It's just kind of like a customary thing that most people do. It is not required by Kickstarter. It's not a thing that you have to do, but most people expect it. And so now it's like, okay, well, now what are we going to do? Because now we've passed our funding goal and we need to provide something else because people expect us to. But that's where you get in trouble, because you're doing this often by the seat of your pants as this is going on, and you aren't necessarily thinking about the numbers the way that you were when you were first setting everything up. And so we did have a couple of stretch goals that we're already we've gotten one and we're about to meet the second one. So then we were like, okay, well, what else can we do with a comic that provides added value and like shows that like, hey, we appreciate the extra support and we want to provide a little something extra for people, but it's not going to cause some kind of logistical nightmare for us.
AKA not physical stuff.
Right, not more physical stuff that we then have to figure out how to physically get to people, because that's where you run into problems.
Right.
Because even if because we had talked about doing some sort of poster and giving that to everyone. Well, so we have 70-something Kickstarters, and only a handful of the tiers are physical book people.
Right.
So you can't put a poster, like a larger poster, into media mail. So then you have to go get the tubes and you have to wrap it. And then at that point, like the $5 tier, you're only making like 20 cents. So
right.
it quickly turned into we want to do something. And part of this Kickstarter is we were really adamant about wanting to support other people. The main storyline runs parallel to a coming out story of a gay youth. And so one of the things people could do is they could donate a copy of the book to an LGBT organization. And so we wanted to make sure that was, we're giving back to the same community we came from.
Right.
And when we started looking at stretch goals, actually, Jesse way better than I do.
Yeah.
I've met him like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. Jesse's a good friend of mine.
We had, I think I met them at the first Bangor Toy Comic Con with you.
Probably, yeah, because they're usually at that show.
But Jesse and Margaret Lundberg, not Luddenberg, because I keep trying to change their name.
Lundberg, yes.
Lundberg. Do a comic called Harold the Happy Human Eater.
Yep.
And I love watching Jesse work at conventions, and his wife is just the bee's knees and then some. So I was like, we know this person who's a working artist. Why don't we see if we can get them on board? And that way we're still giving back to the community that has supported us in the past. So let's turn around and do that. So that's our next stretch goal. And if we hit that one, then
yeah, we had Jesse was on, I think he was episode 10. He was on one of my earlier
things.
So I'm looking at the tier rewards. You actually say it's all 5 issues. So are you going to be
right?
Okay.
Right.
So your idea isn't to have them your 24 page at a time. You're going to do all 5 issues together.
Yeah.
So the way that this is going to work out as far as like the distribution of it is that in a couple of months after the dust has settled on the Kickstarter and everything, we're going to release the first issue.
Okay.
And all of the Kickstarter backers will get the first issue. And that'll also be released like on digital platforms like Drive-Thru Comics and Comixology and that sort of thing. And as each one, then every couple of months, the next chapter will be released on these digital platforms. All the Kickstarter backers who pledged for them will get them, and then they'll be released on the platforms. And then when all of those are done, toward like end of next year, then we'll be releasing it as a trade paperback as well. So this still gives people an opportunity they don't have to wait the whole time to get the whole story. They'll be able to get the story a little bit at a time as we're completing it. And it allows an opportunity for people who maybe missed the Kickstarter to get in on it as it proceeds, like to discover it and become a part of, the group that gets to read this and everything. It'll be out there in the world, hopefully gathering more of an audience as we move forward.
So I guess my question is, I'm just curious from a marketing and production perspective, why did the two of you decide to just make this the Kickstarter for all 5 issues and not issue 1, then a few months later issue 2?
Because running a Kickstarter is stressful, Barney.
and realistically, that was the primary reason behind it. Like leading up to oh my God, if you had watched our Facebook Live when we very first started it, we didn't know where to find the freaking publish button.
The launch button. We're like, how do we turn it on?
We're like, Amanda, you go tell a story while I Google how to do this.
Tell a story while Jeremy tries to figure out how to turn our Kickstarter on.
It's simple stuff like that. And then then it kind of turned into what is the value for the participant? Because
Right.
I think we never went into this thinking about for the money. We wanted to make sure like there's compensation. And for me, the way I'm used to being paid for writing is when the trade paperback comes out, we'll look at royalty splits there, and that's what I'm used to. Like I write for 3 months and then publish something, so that's just how my world works.
Right.
For Amanda, it's a little bit more do a project, get paid, do a project, get paid.
Right. And doing a project of this size also represents a rather large opportunity cost on my end, because the amount of time that it takes to draw an entire graphic novel is a lot of other freelance projects that I have to say no to in that time.
And it also turned into a little bit of a conversation about, well, we fund the first 2 and then we don't fund the third one.
Right. Yeah. Then what?
On my end, I'm looking for the money come trade paperback as a royalty split. So that's where my money comes from. So it kind of turned into
for the 12 months between now and then.
Yeah. And so we have just, well, our industries are very adjacent. The way we handle them, they're very different.
Right.
And this way we can say that Amanda, because I don't know, whatever. Amanda's basically getting the Kickstarter money because that was the arrangement, because her time investment is so immense compared to mine. And I'm helping coloring the flats, but even then, like, I'm taking a fraction of the work. So yeah, let's get to that royalty spot so I can make the big bucks.
Yeah, you gotta get those royalties coming in.
And I find the idea, I find it intriguing where you've decided to have this be all 5 issues and kind of release it almost to the point where you see it almost as the equivalent of where, the Netflix culture is to binge watch everything. So watch it. But this is also where we've seen success happen, where now with some live streaming are now releasing episodes weekly.
Back to the serial format.
Right.
There's really a lot to be said for the audience retention of a serial format actually being used as a serial instead of just dumping it all out at once. And it's like, yeah, it's a 10-hour movie with bathroom breaks.
Right. And so with that said, do you actually do you have a schedule that, because now it's kind of on your shoulders, Amanda, do you have a schedule to say, all right, I want to make sure that by the 15th of every other month, or by the 20th of every quarter? How have you now?
So I haven't hammered out every single detail of that yet, because we're still in the first few days of this Kickstarter. And I'm just kind of reeling still at the moment. But yeah, that's the idea, is that I'm gonna have an actual like production schedule of like, this page to this page is getting done this week, and then this page to this page is getting done this week, and then by X date these pages will be done for this chapter. And because we have the first chapter isn't going to come out for a couple, even though it's done, it's not going to come out for a couple of months yet, so that we have time to build up a backlog and then be able to release them every like 2 months, I think is the plan, until the trade paperback comes out.
You have kids and a husband, and apparently they need attention once in a while. So.
I live in the wilderness and occasionally have to fight off bears, like stuff is going on. I got stuff going on.
But thankfully, you know how to use a condom and a rifle, all thanks to Mr.
It's true.
Oaks.
Thank you, Mr. Oaks. It's very helppful.
for those days when you have to like draw a trade paperback in the middle of Maine. Yeah. See?
I mean, I feel like that's everyone's experience right there. So yeah, like and that was something that this is kind of a fun project in the fact that we each have kind of a special skill that we bring to the table as far as the back end comes, because like I've never worked with Comixology, I've never worked with drive-through comics, but I also have extensive knowledge as far as like when we go to publish this as a trade paperback, like that's where I'm going to shine because that's what I do.
Because you're all about the Amazon system.
Yeah, but Comixology, do I have to make an account? Like I don't even know what to do there. Like, I've literally had
What
to
are we
ask her, like,
doing?
do they sell print or only? Like I didn't even know. So, yeah, this isn't something that I would suggest an author ever go in on for themselves, but I do think that there is a great marriage between skill sets. But everyone has to be kind of realistic walking into it, because I feel for any author who would say like, no, I'm half this process, so I want half everything. Well, guess what? You're not that special.
Yeah, and I think that's just the thing, is that it's also very difficult. Like if we didn't have like a friendship and like a creative collaborative type of friendship starting off, like if we didn't already have a rapport, it's a big ask to be like, hey, do you want to work on my comic? And you probably won't get paid for like months of labor until after, maybe. And also, I don't have any of the specialized knowledge that you do, so we're going to rely on all of your specialized knowledge. Like, it's a lot. And if we didn't have this rapport, and if it also wasn't a project that I was also passionate about, it would be difficult for this to work. Because I also, like, you know, when Jeremy even just told me the idea that he had for this, I was like, oh, I really like this. And then once I read the first draft of the script, I was like, oh, I really like this. Like, yes, this is happening. I'm gonna make this happen.
And I think it's important for people to know that if I was just going to hunt for a random artist, that this could be costing me
so
$200-300 per finished, like $600 per finished page
easily. Yeah.
And if you look at a 24-page comic times 5, like you're going to be broke. And realistically, unless you're Neil Gaiman putting out Sandman, you are not getting that money back in royalties. So why are you in this? So I feel that that's always important for authors to know. Like, the initial investment, if you don't have a friend, is going to suck.
Right, because as you mentioned too, is like and like Amanda, as Jeremy was saying, on average, professional comic book artists as yourself, finished letter, and he's talking about everything, lettering, everything. That's about 500.
Yeah, like it's a lot. Like the actual page rate, because if you're doing everything, like if you either have one person doing everything, or you're paying like 4 people to do all these different parts, and it's going to end up being pretty pricey per page.
Right. So
Amanda, the final number, $60,000.
Oh, did you just do some math? Oh,
I just did math.
Yeah, it's about.
I guess I need to. I guess I need to adjust this Kickstarter goal here. Hold on.
Yeah, we're gonna move the decimal over a little.
Just gonna add a 0 on the end here.
Yeah, we see it. It's because if you're saying 500-page, 24-page comic, that's $12,000 for the artist.
Yeah.
So the next stretch goal will be $60,000, and it'll just be Amanda's living wage. Amanda gets paid what she's worth. Stretch it.
Yeah. You know what? If I wanted to get paid what I was worth, I would not have become a comic artist. So.
Oh, I feel you. And I think the other thing that's really, I think the thing that's really helped is and weirdly, we both went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and Savannah was very. Did you take a lot of any business classes for your undergrad?
No.
Oh, see, that was something that was awesome. For graduate, you basically took a year's worth of business classes. And
I think in like your MFA was in what? In graphic design, right? Yeah, I think there's a lot more focus on it in the graphic design program than there is in the sequential program, because the sequential art program, we were very much just like, we're making comics. It's fun over here.
But I think the fact that we both went to Savannah, like there is a certain amount, like Savannah's slogan is the business of art. And so having realistic, livable conversations.
Yeah, I would not say I was completely unprepared, like going there. It wasn't necessarily part of the curriculum, but the professors were all working professionals. So there was definitely a lot of talk about like, this is what you should be expecting to get paid, and these are some of the pitfalls you can run into working professionally and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like a class that I had to take or anything, but there was certainly a lot of that talk going on and that kind of information passed on to us.
Yeah, my undergrad was basically, you're probably going to eat ramen for the rest of your life. Good luck.
Oh, so sad.
Okay. And then I went into education because that's where the real money is.
Right. Yeah.
So
We make good decisions, obviously, is the theme of this. Just the best decisions.
So this is great. You guys are at your, as I say, you've reached your goal. You've hit your first stretch goal, and now you're less than 100 away from your second stretch goal.
Yeah.
And you still got 26 days left. Is that? Yeah.
Which now yes. I feel like we did everything. Now what? Like
now what do we do? We just have to keep being annoying for 26 more days.
Are you looking at more? Are you looking at more stretch goals that you're going to try to figure out to unlock now?
Yeah, so we're probably going to continue on at our current strategy is that we're basically just going to continue on with more of the variant covers, and obviously we're not physically printing individual chapters. So these variant covers are going to be like virtual variant covers where they will be included with the digital single chapter releases and also be like bonus material in the trade paperback. Right. So it's kind of like just a way to like add in a little bit more value and give other working comic artists a little bit of work and bring them into the project. Right. So,
and one of the things that we specifically wanted to look at is we've kind of already headhunted who the next artist or the next company that we want to reach out to and get some feedback or some artist suggestions from their artist team. And they are a predominantly people of color. For their whole company is built on that premise. So we realized at this point, we're like, oh, there's a lot of white people working on this. Yeah, let's diversify
a little bit.
So
pick this up slightly,
which is kind of the ongoing theme in the actual story is, you know, this element of diversity. And so we're like, well, let's literally put our money where our mouth is, and let's keep working towards that. So right. We've already got plans happening.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. We are at our hour mark. This was a really fast hour. So
we're good at talking.
Oh
yeah. So So congratulations again. I'm very excited for you all. And I'm excited to check it out as well. So
thank you.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah. So come back on again when you're on your next project for when you produce I Am the Last or I Am the Second. So
yeah, we're gonna have to do at least 2 more so I can become a friend of the show. So
right.
I got goals
like, I
now.
need that bad.
You got goals now. I gotta say though, Jeremy, it looks like a cozy house you're in. That likes.
So we call it Murder House. You can see. Oh wait, right
the
there.
Night,
that's Gerald.
Okay.
The house around this corner leads into my bedroom, and there's another door there that leads to the attic, except you couldn't ever go up there because they took off all the doorknobs.
Weird.
That's extremely creepy.
Yeah. And then there's by where one of my roommates' offices is, there's the stairs going down into the basement, and it's been like bolted the whole time. And so the other day he just walks in and he goes, "Have you noticed that the basement door is open. And I was like,
No.
we can't open it. There's no
No.
there's no door handle. And
No.
he goes, yeah.
Get out. Get out right now.
And so, of course, like we're all three of us are just kind of standing looking at this door being like, where's the person who's going to kill us? And I decided to go downstairs because I'm the person who's going to die first. And so I go down, and going down the stairs, it goes into like a real basement, but in the older part of the house, it's just a crawl space.
Right.
And going down the stairs, there's this giant hole in the wall that just leads to dirt.
No.
And you're like, that's where she lives. So yeah, we have done everything but like put chairs and move furniture in front of that door now.